What's love got to do with it? What's love got to do? Oh, hi. I've been thinking about this question. What's love got to do with leadership? Hi, I'm Frances. In this series of Breaktime Breakthrough, we'll talk about servant leadership today. I think that the heart of any issue begins with the heart. Like, have you ever tried to make a change in your life? Go on a diet, start to exercise, stay off social media? And have you ever made a New Year's resolution only to forget about it after January 31? I know I'm super guilty of that. Research has shown that willpower works a lot like muscle. If we use it a lot, we get tired. And when we get tired, we're very likely to quit. And as leaders, we know we constantly need to develop ourselves, right? Like lift the lid, as John Maxwell puts it. But many leadership concepts and learnings focus on the outside, the frameworks to follow, behaviors to build, habits to develop. Yet in the book Lead Like Jesus, they found that true change, true leadership change, really only happens when there's a change in our heart. Whenever may opportunity tayo to influence other people, we need to check whether, are we doing it out of love for them or are we doing it out of love for ourselves? The heart question here is, are we a serving leader or are we a self-serving leader? We saw in a previous episode how Jesus served and loved others and said that true servant leadership is leading the way Jesus did. I was watching Simon Sinek on YouTube the other day. You probably heard of him. And he was talking about how he was inspired by his interaction with the US Marines. The Marines kasi are recognized as one of the most elite military forces in the world. And while he was visiting this base, he was speaking with a general. And he asked the general there, so what makes the Marines so great? To which the general replied, officers eat last. And this whole idea really stuck with Simon enough to write a whole book on it called Leaders Eat Last. Because as we all know, in the corporate world, people are usually shown that you need to look after yourself first and that it's all about us. But here, it was the complete opposite. And Simon explains more of this in the book. Now, I remember first reading this book a couple of years ago. But like a lot of the leadership concepts that I read over the past decade, nagsistruggle ako with its application. I really want to apply it though. I have a desire and a strong willpower inside me. And I really tried to love others and to take care of them. Pero napagod ako. I felt like I was constantly pouring out to people and I was constantly finding myself empty. Minsan, I felt like there's nothing more to give. And many times, I even felt like I wasn't getting anything in return. And that left me impatient, angry, and critical. The popular saying, you can't pour from an empty cup, that just becomes so real when you've experienced being completely empty. Ikaw ba? Have you ever felt like you've poured so much of you and you've got nothing left for yourself? I think this is why Ken Blanchard and Phil Hodges suggests that we seek our answers to these two questions. Let's start with the first one. Whose am I? Do we know that we are unconditionally loved and forgiven by God? Do we know that we're called and set apart? Someone told me once, Frances, hurt people hurt people. But I also believe loved people love people. So tayo, who do we live for? Who do we love for? Do we live for God or do we live to please other people or ourselves? Siya ba yung object of our worship, the source of our security, self-worth, and wisdom, and the authority over our days and lives? Now, when we know whose we are, it becomes easier to answer the second question, who am I? And often when we ask this question, we define ourselves based on who we think we are or on, what we hear other people say about us. But the enemy's formula for self-worth is my performance plus the opinion of others equals self-worth. But if we know we belong to Him, we can define our identity based on who He created us to be. And mga kaibigan, He created us to be loving. I'm sitting here with you today not because I'm the perfect example of love and servant leadership. In fact, I know really well what it's like to be a selfish leader. But I have been on a journey of surrendering my heart and leadership to Jesus, to following Him as the model for the way I lead others. And most of all, to understanding that the way to love and lead others pala is not to love them on my own strength or willpower, because I don't have enough of it and it can get really tiring. But now I know that it is the overflow of God's love that will let me truly love others. Okay, some people might think that love-based leadership is soft, but this isn't the kind of leadership that lets people do whatever they want and then there's no results. After all, when we come together, diba, we need to achieve goals and deliver together. But rather, this is the kind of leadership that requires us to love others so much so that when we influence them, we help them move from who they are to who God wants them to be, not who we want them to be. Whether we lead as an organizational leader or a life role leader, that's not always easy, diba? And my definition of love might not even be the same as yours. But if we looked to Jesus, then we're looking at the same definition and source of love. Ken and Phil gave this formula. Everything minus love equals nothing. And we can try to lead with all our intelligence, knowledge, experience, and strength, but without love, we'll never be truly successful at leading others. So what does love look like? Thankfully, we've got 1 Corinthians 13 as reference. And here's something you can try out. When you go to 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7, where you find the words love or it, try replacing it with your name. And by God's grace and Him as your source, model, and leader, these words are going to come true for you. I hope you've enjoyed the episode today. Don't forget to follow Plus Network on social media channels to get edutaining content and more.